up paying higher and higher. Okay, and there'll be more of the amount of tax saving will become larger. But if the firm locks in on long maturity, okay, the rate will be the same. Okay, on the spread, of course. Okay, on the total, if the firms manage to get locked in. So over the horizon, the amount of tax savings will still be larger for long maturity or long term. The amount of tax savings, because interest rates remain higher. Right? Of course, the gap will narrow in later years. Okay. The opposite is also holds. Okay. So in this case, naturally, the amount of interest expenses and the amount of resulting tax savings will be greater with short than with long maturity. It's downward sloping. Okay. So, given this, the prediction is that, yeah, return structure has a positive slope, it's upward sloping. Firms will enjoy greater tax savings if they go for a long maturity. Ceteris paribus. What does the evidence say? Sometimes we see some significance in the equation, in the regression. Sometimes in some studies, no. Okay. Sometimes insignificant, this and that. So I don't know whether, but anyway, whether it is out there, the effect should be there, but may get swamped by other effects. I don't know. I haven't really looked into debt maturity and tax. That I haven't touched it at all. Just see the results, right? And when I see the results, I don't see any pattern, right, in the results of papers. And when I think about it, I'm not sure. And I have told myself that I would never look at tax. I don't think I will do research on tax. It's boring. Nothing. Then again, somehow got a PhD student said, I want to look at tax and I want to work with you. I thought, Jesus Christ. I can't say no. It's an obligation. When the students, PhD students say, yeah, I want to work with you. Work under your supervision, and but I'm interested in what you hate. At least, 2 years of coursework, roughly 5 years, at least 4 years to be on my back. And I have to think about tax. I hate it. So, from now on, from that point onwards, I tell myself I don't hate anything. All right, food for thought. I'm not going to examine you on this, but it would be good if you could think about debt maturity and how you would pick stocks for your portfolio. If you see firms with a lot of long-term debt in their on their balance sheet, on the right-hand side of their balance sheet, how would you feel? Some, but same industry, similar size, right? But more of short-term, short maturity debt. Are they the same in terms of expected return, of course, for your portfolio? That is, they have the same quality. Okay. Obviously, when you pick stock, you want to pick good stock, right, for your portfolio. Yes, we diversify. Diversify all the unsystematic risk. What remains is systematic risk. Okay? And when we diversify, we sort of admitting to ourselves that, look, we are useless. We're no good. Yeah, we tell people that we are fund managers, but actually we're no good. That's why we have to diversify. Right? If we were that good, we would simply pick stocks. Right? We would bet. if our private information is reliable, we bet. But why do we diversify? Why do we care about risk? Trying to diversify risk. Because after all, we don't have. Right? Let's sort of stay on the safe side of things. Okay? Otherwise, we would pick any particular stocks and invest a lot, right? And get a lot of money back. Okay. Although we admit this to ourselves, that when we invest, don't we care about which stocks are we picking? Are we selecting as part of our portfolio diversification? Right? To me, I would. If that's my job. If that's my career, I would do that. Okay. That's all about leverage. Okay. Now let's get to know the last topic, which is dividend policy. Okay, so let's take a look at the payout decisions first. Let's go through this nice and quickly. Okay. What is a payout policy, a dividend policy? Essentially, dividend is dividend. Okay? It's about giving money back to shareholders. Okay? Shareholders can only ask for or demand dividends, right? So dividends are not backed by legal obligations. Dividends are backed by economic obligations, which can go either way. So when you're supposed to not pay dividends and you pay dividends, then something funny can happen to your firm as well, right? If your firm stock price, in other words. Right? And naturally, if you're supposed to pay dividends and you don't pay dividends, then most definitely something really funny, very funny can happen to your stock price. Right? This is simply because when we pay dividends out of free cash flow. Okay, not out of free cash flow. Out of profit. Legally speaking, out of profit. Right? So we have, after all the expenses, then we have money left. Okay? How much to invest, how much to pay dividend. Okay? From that pool of money. Okay? From that bucket. Okay? Not after we invest. So, in other words, we have to think about how much to invest at the same time. When we think about how much to pay back to shareholders, how much to give back to shareholders. If we give a lot back or too much back to shareholders, and we want to maintain the reinvestment, okay, then we have to bring money in from outside one way or another, either in the form of debt money or equity money. Or just never mind if we are pure equity firms, whether use internal equity or external equity. So the bottom line is that dividend policy cannot run away from financial policy. And to a lot of people, dividend policy is basically financial policy in disguise. Okay. Now, the more important thing to think about is whether or not it matters how much firms pay cash dividends. Does it matter if firms change dividends? Now let's get to know how, let's get to know what dividend policy looks like in the first place. How can we know whether a firm, any given firm, change their dividend policy? It's a policy, right? It's a typical way in which they pay dividend. How some firms have changed that, so how would we know that? How do we identify such a change? Well, first we could look at dividend yield. Okay. Yield is DPS divided by share price. Now a lot of people don't look at yield, but look at just DPS. Simply because share price fluctuates. Right? To the extent that share price fluctuates, then it makes more sense to look at DPS. Because If share price fluctuates, yield would fluctuate straight away, even when DPS is constant. Okay. Now, dividend yield anyway is important, at least from theoretical standpoint or analytical standpoint, because dividend is only one part of total return that accrues to shareholders. Okay, another bit that shareholders enjoy as part of return on their investment in the firm is capital gain. So what's important to you for your degree, for your SP, thesis, whatever, right? SP, I think, is that when you want to calculate return, you need to make sure that you include both dividend yield and capital gain in your return calculation. So from data stream, you don't download just price, but you download a series that is called RI, right, which is total return index, and treat that as price. Okay, you don't just go price, right? Price, and then you just get capital gains. What if firms also pay dividends? You leave that out completely. Okay. This is very important, especially if you want to, what you want to test is to do with wealth effect, how shareholder wealth change. Okay? Or you need to rely hinge your analysis on a measure of wealth. Okay? Now the second measure is payout ratio. Right? Reciprocal of payout is retention. Okay? So dividends divided by earnings. So retention is 1 minus payout. Okay? Payout is useful, right? Because you can use payout ratio to estimate future dividends. Okay? Why is it important to estimate future dividends? When we talk about dividends, of course, we talk about payers, right? Future dividends, future dividends. Oh. Future dividends is, let's say we at time 0, future dividend is 1, right? And we have G minus K here. Yeah? This is how you study. You're dogmatic. You're just like a dog. Just follow, write down, swallow anything that I spit. That's what you do. Dogmatism or dogmatic. You never analytical. See? Just dogmatic. You think. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? When we see this, okay, it's K minus G, right? Or R minus G. This is cost of equity, isn't it? Right? Or equilibrium return on equity. Or equilibrium growth rate. Right? Equilibrium growth rate. For the firm or for any asset in the same class, in the same economy, same segment, that equilibrium, okay? And a firm or stock is one of the elements in that matrix, or in that equilibrium. Okay. So, but this is the growth for the stock, okay? Expected growth rate for the stock. This is an equilibrium model. In equilibrium, can a single asset outgrow the economy? In general? No, it can't. Right? So, if an economy is made up of or any particular equilibrium is made up of high growth and low growth. Okay? In equilibrium, this has reached equilibrium. So on average, K has got to be higher than G. By structure, it must be greater than G. G cannot be greater than K. Because K, yeah, you think about K, cost of equity, aren't you? Or required return. But this is equilibrium return. Return is price change. So return in a way is growth. But you don't understand this because when you learn this, you simply try to memorize. You never think. Why is this way? So when students are made to derive a formula, to prove a formula, they complain. In practice, we don't prove, right? Why do we have to learn how to prove formula? Because you need to understand the formula first. Understand your tool. Can we use this dividend discount model for a growth firm? For a growth firm, expected growth can be very high, right? Higher than this. The, implied. It can be high, much higher. Yeah. Because the growth firm is not a firm that has reached its equilibrium yet. Right? The demand still by far exceeds supply in its product market. That's why firms is expected to expand and expand, be able to expand a lot. Right? That's why we have high PE of 15 times, 15 years. So when the PE is high, E is supposed to catch up the PE very, very soon. Okay. That's why PE is so high. Okay, anyway. Future dividends is important. Why is it, why we're talk about estimating future dividends? Because for firms that pay predictable dividends, what kind of firm would pay predictable dividends? Give cash out on a regular and predictable basis, blue chip stocks. What are blue chip? Casino? Blue chip? Okay. Now, anyway, how could we use payout ratio we observe now? Right now, to estimate future dividends? Well, people estimate earnings growth, right? We know the payout now, we know the retention ratio. We know the retention ratio is the amount we invested in the firm. We know the firm expected return on equity, right? We would know earnings at time 1, at time 0, at time 1. Okay, assuming that the payout ratio is constant, right? At least in the short run, across time, at least in the short run, then we can tell the retention or the amount of dividend next period by applying the payout ratio. Okay. Try to work this out by yourself. Now, what we also observe, interestingly, but I don't feel surprised, is that when we observe high retention ratio, at the same time we observe high expected growth rate. Okay. Oh, before I forget, a lot of stuff in this material, dividend policy, come from Professor Theo Vermeulen at INSEAD. You know INSEAD? Do you know or you don't know? What is INSEAD? Where? Okay. What kind of university is that? Is it good or bad? It's top notch. INSEAD. Right? It's come from INSEAD. Come from Theo Vermeulen. I don't have a lot of materials, class materials on dividend policy, so I asked Theo Vermeulen, Theo, please give me your lecture materials, whatever you have. Yeah, can't be bothered. Harry, and I know you have good material, Theo. Please give me what you teach at INSEAD, Theo. Here you go, you have it. Thank you. Right. We know each other quite well. He's kind of my mentor. He's old in his retirement now. Right. This is a proof. Indicated yield. Right. The yield that we estimate. Okay, for start. High yield to the low projected growth, low expected growth. Okay. Low yield, higher growth. When I see scatter plot like this, yeah, Theo got his student to fit curve in here. We see some sort of nonlinear relationship, exponential. We see it as an exponential, yeah. But in between the observations, so, do we still see negative relationship? Yeah, pretty much. So that's quite okay. Although, yeah, it's pretty thick here. So let's say this is exogenous. Growth is exogenous, right? Firms only identify growth. As growth moves not that much, dividend drops by a lot. What does it say about pecking order theory? What does it say about pecking order theory? How is it related? Never mind the extreme observation, right? Just look at the cluster here. You still see negative relationship. And it's not really, it's not linear. It's not linear. Right? So it drops like this. So let's say about here, right? Expected growth, as expected growth is goes up, increases by this much. Yield drops by, say, 1.5 times. Right. The slope is quite steep around here. So dividend drop by, growth goes up by a unit, dividends drop by more than 1 unit. 1, 2, as growth goes out, dividend drops. How would you link this back to pecking order theory? Yeah, exactly. Right? This is at least prima facie evidence, some sort of quick testimony of pecking order theory. Internal funds, right? If firms don't care about adverse selection, right, firms would go out and raise equity. We shouldn't observe such a pronounced relation. This is how to think critically. Okay. Try to link things back to what we observe back to what we know. Okay. Now, another interesting pattern is that a payout ratio, right, also reflects or follows a firm's life cycle or reflects a firm's life cycle. Okay. So under certain assumptions, we should expect, and we also observe this, that growth firms tend to have low or zero payout. Does that make sense? Mature or declining firms, let's say mature firms. Declining firms, never mind perhaps. Just mature firms tend to have a high payout ratio. Okay. But we say here under certain assumptions. What should these certain assumptions be? Free cash flow problem? If free cash flow problem is really severe, would we observe mature firm paying large dividends? No. So the fact that we see a pattern across life cycle in this way, maybe free cash flow problems are sort of free cash flow problem does not hold. Maybe it's there, right? In some firms, perhaps not all firms. Okay. Free cash flow theory, a free cash flow problem, is good. It's there. I think it is for real. But it is not the purpose. Jensen did not come up with the free cash flow theory. It basically did not design free cash flow theory or problem to explain all firms in the economy. Just say, in this type of firm, there will be free cash flow problem. So whenever we read theory, we need to understand why this theory was formulated, was developed. To understand what, right? To rationalize what thing. Very often people see theory, yeah, we generalize a theory randomly, and then theory doesn't hold. And then they say bad theory. Well, I think that is completely uninformed, irrational approach. Okay, how do firms pay dividends? How many forms are there in which firms pay dividends? When we talk about dividend, very often, most of the time, we think of cash dividend. No? But firms can also pay stock dividend. Okay? This is also known as dividend in kind. Now, it's been pointed out in the literature that ceteris paribus, if nothing else in the firm is changed, then stock dividends don't increase shareholders' wealth. If the left-hand side of the balance sheet is constant, no change there, stock dividends simply means more cuts in the same pie. More cuts in the same pie. Yeah, you end up with more shares, more cuts. But the cuts become smaller in size. Okay. So aggregate wealth is still the same. Okay. Let's take a quick break and we come back to important dates in the dividend process, because it would take a while. Yeah. But hopefully not too long. Let's take a break first.